What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steve.
I'm Lindsay.
Today we're going to be reading to Guy Fawkes and the Conspiracy of the Gunpowder Plot.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Tomorrow, you guys in the UK will be going out and celebrating Bonfire Night, and so I thought it was about time that Lindsay learns the story of Guy Fawkes.
Yeah.
This is the first time she will learn anything about this. While I have previously learned a little bit about Guy Fawkes, I feel like I'm still lacking in the whole story.
Like the details of it.
Right. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from this video particularly.
On November the 5th, 1605, 13 men plotted together to blow up the Palace of Westminster in London on the day when the most powerful men in England were set to meet at Parliament. The authorities learned about the plan through an anonymous letter, and the terrorists were stopped just in time. The man they encountered at the scene was Guy Fawkes, who had been guarding barrels of gunpowder in the basement below the palace. If you're an American, you probably know about Guy Fawkes from the movie V for Vendetta, and you most likely associate him with anarchy.
Okay, so I've never seen this movie. I've heard of it. I don't even know where it's from. Is this a British movie or is this an American movie?
I think it's an American movie.
Is it?
I remember, I don't know if I saw it when it first came out, but I remember seeing it in like 2007. So I don't know if that's the year it came out or not, but it was so long ago, I don't really remember the details. I just, like he said, I remember it being something about anarchy and like...
So is this about Guy Fawkes, or are they just wearing the mask here?
Or maybe they're just taking like a small part of the story and making a movie about.
That's true, because there is a group, I don't know if it's worldwide, but at least here in America, called Anonymous, that wears those masks.
Yeah, that's true. And also, I wonder if that's his real name, Guy Fawkes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that's a cool name.
Yeah,
like,
that is.
Gotta be honest.
Yeah, gotta be honest. That is kind of a cool name. But.
This association has been pushed even more in recent years with the use of Guy Fawkes masks by the anonymous organisation.
Yeah.
If you're from the UK, you already know about Guy Fawkes Night, which is celebrated every November the 5th with a bonfire and fireworks. Nearly everyone has heard of the famous Gunpowder Plot, but few people know details about Guy Fawkes' life or the motivations behind why he and his friends wanted to blow up Parliament in the first place. Even though this is a biography of his...
I mean, think about how wild that is, though. Blow up Parliament. Yeah. I mean, that's the equivalent of, I guess, Congress here. Yeah. Like, think about how big of a deal that is. That's massive.
Basically, remember the show Designated Survivor?
Yeah.
That was the premise of that show. It started
with that action happening. That was a good show, by the way.
Yeah, well, it started out good.
Yeah, it started out good, but...
his life, Guy Fawkes is really a very small part of the larger story. So there's not very much that is known about Guy Fawkes' childhood, except that he was born in 1570 in York, England, to Edward and Edith Fawkes. His family had been Protestant, and his father even worked for the Church of England. They were law-abiding Protestants who went to church every Sunday. His mother came from a long line of Catholics, but she chose to give up her faith in favor of conforming. Guy Fawkes' father, he died when he was 8 years old, and his mother was a widow for years before she decided to marry a Catholic man. They began practicing the faith in secret, and they baptized Guy and his siblings in a secret ceremony in the St. Michael le Belfry Church. He attended St. Peter's School in York, which had a lot of recusant Catholic teachers and students. He was able to attend Mass in the homes of people who were hiding priests. As an adult, he chose to continue practicing that Catholic faith, and he became passionate about trying to protect it. At some point, Guy Fawkes is said to have gotten married and had a son. There are records from 1590 that a man named Guy Fawkes married a woman named Maria Pauline, and...
So his name really was Guy Fawkes.
That is a cool name. No matter what you think about Guy Fawkes, that is a really cool name.
Memorable name.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would forget that name.
It sounds like a villain or character in a...
So it sounds like his father dying completely changed the trajectory of his life because he was Protestant and then he became Catholic.
But his mom was Catholic
originally,
before and
but she
renounced it.
Right.
Switched to
Protestant. Wow, okay.
A birth certificate shows that their son, Thomas Fawkes, was born. When Guy Fawkes was 21 years old, he would have been old enough to take out his inheritance. That same year, there are documents of a lease and a 3.5-acre piece of land and home being signed by Guy Fawkes. This included the stamp of an image with a falcon, which was his family crest. He entered the service of Anthony Browne, the first Viscount of Montagu, as a footman. At that time, working in the service of a lord was considered to be a very respectable job among the lower class, especially compared to being a farmer. But for whatever reason, Browne did not like Guy Fawkes, so he fired him. Back then, your reputation was everything, and it must have been difficult for him to get another job without a good letter of recommendation. He managed to work for Browne's grandson after Anthony Browne's death. From the records, it would seem that he struggled to maintain steady employment, so at 21 years old, he left England and moved to Flanders. He fought together with the Spanish army to do his part in the 80-Year War. At that time, Spain was considered to be the protector of the Catholic faith, and during the war, they were fending off Dutch Protestants in the Netherlands. While fighting with the Spanish, he decided to go by the name of Guido. He was described by one of his compatriots to be of excellent good natural parts.
Of excellent good natural parts. So he went by Guido? Here we would pronounce
Guido.
Guido.
Yeah, I never knew. Is that the proper pronunciation for that? Guido?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I always thought it was Guido.
I did too.
Okay.
I think it just depends on
He had very special parts? What was it?
Of excellent good natural parts, very resolute, and universally learned, and was sought by all the most distinguished in the Archduke's camp for nobility and virtue. People say that he was very tall and muscular. He had reddish-brown hair and a beard and was basically described as being the perfect soldier. Despite having these descriptions, no one knows what Guy Fawkes truly looks like because there was never a portrait painted of his likeness. We only have the caricatures that depicted him after his death, and these were mostly drawn in such a way.
Okay, I've assumed that what I've always seen as Guy Fawkes on these thumbnails and whatnot, I assumed that was actually pretty much what he looked like. Yeah, based off reality. So we really don't know what he looked like.
Not besides like the general details.
That's wild. Okay.
That made him look like a villain. In most images, he has black hair and a beard with an upturned moustache. After King James I came into power, Catholics waited with bated breath to see what would happen next. A recusing Catholic man named Thomas Percy was a cousin of Henry Percy, the 8th Earl of Northumberland. Even though he was not a lord himself, Percy was able to take it upon himself to request an audience with the king. He asked for mercy on behalf of English Catholics. Wanting to gain popularity with his new English subjects, James was vague and made sure not to make any promises. It was still very early in his reign, and he was not sure yet what he should do about the tensions between Protestants and Catholics. He essentially told Percy not to worry because he personally had no ill will towards Catholics. Percy believed that King James was going to offer some kind of relief and that he might be getting ready to repeal Queen Elizabeth I's laws.
So I wonder how much time it was between when Queen Elizabeth instated that law and when she passed away. And
I don't know. Let us know in the comments, guys. I have no idea.
Percy was very happy about this, and he returned to tell his friends and family that they no longer had to worry about being persecuted for their faith. Some even hoped that maybe James would convert to Catholicism and that the entire country would revert back to practicing the one true faith. For about a year, English Catholics were able to live a normal life. James temporarily stopped collecting fees that recusant Catholics were required to pay for skipping the Protestant service. He also did not push for his guard to search Catholic homes for harboured priests. However, the laws made by Elizabeth I were kept in place. He had not repealed them because he was waiting to see what the reaction would be from his Protestant Parliament. In the summer of 1604, the members of Parliament, they finally noticed that Catholics were not being persecuted anymore, and they began to push King James to come down hard on them. The way they felt about the Catholics was similar to communists in the Cold War. Many of them believed that if they were not stamped out, they would cause an uprising.
Wow.
So James brought back the same laws that Elizabeth I had put in place. Suddenly, Catholic homes were being searched once again, and they were being treated like criminals. The Catholic people in England, they had lived so long being oppressed, but the thing that triggered their anger was the false sense of hope.
I can't believe, I mean, I know we have throughout history persecuted people of different faiths, but it's so mind-boggling to me that people...
We can't just coexist.
Right.
Like, you live over there and exist in your bubble, and we'll be over here.
I know, right?
I know.
I've never known of that in life,
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully we haven't lived in that society where we hate each other because of whatever religion. you know?
And like wanting to dominate another group of people because of that.
Because of what they believe. It's just, I don't know. That's just so weird.
So far as to instate laws that
I know.
You'll be killed if you.
It's just insane. It's just insane to me
because
that people have this thoughts.
if you're coercing someone into doing it, it doesn't mean anything to them anyway.
No,
they're just doing it to appease you. So,
right? Exactly.
I mean, what's the point?
I mean, I guess some people want that power of having these people under control, even if it is just appeasing to.
Even if it's just a
fake
fake for show thing.
I don't know.
It just doesn't make sense.
That's crazy.
They felt betrayed by King James, and it was enough to make some want to kill him. Even though Guy Fawkes is the one who is most remembered for the Gunpowder Plot, the ringleader was actually a man named Robert Catesby. He began making plans in 1603 and first recruited a man named Thomas Winter. Catesby and Winter, they rode to Spain because they had associates who were Catholic there. Spain was also designated as the protector of the Catholic faith. Since Catholics were being persecuted once again, they begged for help from the Spanish to stop King James from killing their people. However, the Spanish, they were not interested in getting involved.
Denied.
Catesby and Winter, they returned to England and decided if they were going to find someone to help, it would have to be at home. The people they found were John Wright and Thomas Percy. Winter had gone to school with Guy Fawkes, and he seemed like the perfect candidate to help them out with the plot. After all, Fawkes had plenty of experience fighting in Spain, and he knew a lot about gunpowder. Fawkes was smart, and he knew how to stay cool under pressure.
Okay, that is insane. Did you catch that?
Which part?
Well, think about it. Guy Fawkes is the reason for Bonfire Night, basically.
Right.
He's the one that the name is associated with what happened. But he isn't
the one who started it.
But he's not the one that originally had the plan. He's the one that they brought in
to implement it and like
think about how wild that is. Like, these other names probably aren't known by a ton of people that actually know about the story, know a little bit about who Guy Fawkes is, know about Bonfire Night and all that. Yet they're the ones that kind of started it.
It's probably the name. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
The name is just so memorable.
Guy Fawkes is a very memorable name. How do you forget that? Yeah.
In May of 1604, the five men were spotted together at London's Duck and Drake Inn. They whispered about their plot, and they swore an oath of loyalty and secrecy. The group was biding their time, trying to figure out the finer details of the plan as time went on. Thomas Percy had the resources to purchase a property in London that was very close to the Palace of Westminster. Guy Fawkes began to live with him, posing as a footman named John Johnson. This way, they'd never seem out of the ordinary to anyone who witnessed them around town. At that time, it was not uncommon for men to buy gunpowder, especially if they planned to sail overseas. They needed the powder to use their guns and cannons and defend themselves from pirates. The only problem was that they'd need to buy small quantities over a long period of time in order to not raise suspicions.
You gotta really plan ahead and stockpile it.
It's so interesting also. I was just thinking about this. Like, it was so easy back then compared to now to
get away with things.
It's like you could plan out all this stuff and it just...
Everything's got a digital footprint now.
Right.
Tracked with
cameras.
Yeah. Like, it would be very hard to get away with something like this.
Guy Fawkes would use his connections to slowly gather a cache of gunpowder barrels that were left over from ships entering the harbour and bring them back to Thomas Percy. At the time, the Palace of Westminster had a collection of smaller buildings. Lords and members of the upper class would come and go from these buildings on a regular basis without being stopped by security. The rules were very relaxed, and it was actually easy for Thomas Percy to rent a storage space in the basement below the palace, claiming that it was for his cousin, the Earl of Northumberland, to store firewood for winter. The day of Parliament kept getting delayed. And
Hold on. Christopher Wright.
I just can't stop reading that as Guido Fawkes.
Guido Fawkes. Oh, man. Look at this. Do you notice this? Look at the John Wright.
Yeah, there was no J then.
I know. I've heard that somewhere else. What can I look into to actually learn about that? You know what I mean? I want to learn about the old writing style. You know what I mean?
That's a good topic.
Yeah. I don't even know what I'm asking to learn about, guys. But something along the lines of like, okay, this... They didn't have a J at one point, because I remember seeing this with Jesus.
Bible,
yeah. So, like, I'm wondering when and where that changed, and, like, what would we look into to kind of learn more about that type of stuff? Let us know in the comments if you know.
The group of conspirators grew from 5 to 13 men. Unfortunately for them, though, the extended time, combined with the greater number of people who were being told about the plot, meant that it was far more likely that the secret was going to get out. A Catholic man named Lord Monteagle was preparing to be President of Parliament. A masked man handed a letter to one of Monteagle's servants, and it was presented to him immediately. It said, "My lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have a care for your preservation. Therefore, I would advise you, as you tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift your attendance at this Parliament, for though there be no appearance of any stir, yet, I say, they shall receive a terrible blow."
Okay, so the Lord Monteagle must have been in the House of Lords. Like a member of the House of Lords, and so he got tipped off by, I don't know if it was someone in this group or they had just heard.
Maybe it was. I mean, it's 13 of them, man. So, like, it's likely that someone
and they wanted him to be safe. And
yeah, maybe so. Wow. Wow. And let me just take a moment to...
Loose lips sink ships. That's the saying, right?
What?
Loose lips sink ships.
Yes. Let me just take a moment to say... Is that how they really talked back then?
Yeah.
Like, that's so...
You've never... Oh, that is... Okay. Somebody in the comments on...
Oh, I know what you're about to say.
Which video was it we did? It was...
I can't remember.
I think it was the National Anthem video where you were reading the lyrics.
Oh, yes.
Somebody said, I would... Something like, I would pay to hear... I forget.
Hey, to hear me read out some English literature or something like that. When that is.
I forget how they phrased it, but yeah, that's a good idea.
With my accent and like
Southern gentleman reads period literature.
I think that would be very interesting. You know, it's honestly something I've really not learned too much about. I mean, of course, every
I guess
kid...
that makes sense. I'm surprised you didn't know this, but only because I took a British literature class in high school.
I mean,
and so we read Shakespeare.
In school, we did a little bit of Shakespeare here or there, did like some stuff like that, but it wasn't really something that many kids are really into unless you're really into that type of topic.
Or you live there and
yes,
you're used to.
And I have seen some of that. I just, hearing that read, I'm like, wow, that's like a beautiful way to say something like that.
I love it. It's hard to understand sometimes because it really takes a lot of focus to absorb what they're actually saying.
Right.
But I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful way. Yes, sure. I agree.
Even though it was late at night, Lord Monteagle quickly told his servants to ready the horses so that he could deliver the letter to Robert Cecil, the spy master and Secretary of State to King James. Historians have debated over the theories of who actually wrote the anonymous letter. It could have been one of the 13 conspirators. It may even have been Monteagle himself writing a fake letter after hearing letters through the Catholic recusant grapevine. He was awarded £500 per year for his loyalty to the crown. Back then,
I wonder what that was.
It was a small fortune. Even more historians believe that it was Robert Cecil. He was the spy master after all, and some believe that he knew about the Gunpowder Plot for a long time and orchestrated the entire scene to make himself seem like the hero. On the 4th of November, there was an extensive search of the Palace of Westminster. At first, they didn't find anything that concerned them, and they were beginning to believe that the letter was a hoax. But later that day, it was brought to the Royal Guard's attention that there were cellars underneath the palace that had not yet been searched. A royal official named Sir Thomas Knivett was told that one of them was being used for storing firewood, so he led a group of royal guards to search the area. When they arrived, they found Guy Fawkes guarding the firewood. Instead of wearing the clothes of a watchman, Fawkes was dressed in his riding boots, spurs, hat, and cloak as if he was getting ready to jump on a horse at any moment. They moved the wood piles aside to reveal 36 barrels of gunpowder. The royal guards searched him and found a box of long matches.
Man.
Fawkes, he was immediately arrested. On November the 6th...
All right, real quick. How large of a boom
with 36 barrels of
yes.
If that's true. I mean, it was a big, it still is, but what's it called? Parliament is a huge,
massive
building. And back then he said it was buildings, plural.
Right.
But I guess you would only have to target the chamber wherever there would be. Yeah. But wow. 36 barrels. Yeah.
I'm guessing that would have been massive.
King James wanted to meet Guy Fawkes face to face. He interviewed him, asking if he had any regret. He genuinely wanted to know how anyone could be so ruthless and be willing to kill so many people, even the young children who had been present at Parliament. Fawkes said that his only regret was that his plan had failed. Fawkes still called himself John Johnson, and he refused to give up the names of his co-conspirators. King James ordered that Fawkes be tortured and interrogated. He was suspended by manacles and then...
Is that like one of those stretch things?
It looks like it. Yeah, that would be good. Okay. Alrighty.
Put on the rack so that his arms and legs were stretched and popped out of their sockets. He eventually caved and gave his confession. In the before and after of his signature, we can see that he could hardly write his own name.
Wait.
That looks pretty good to me.
Wait, this?
His arms.
Yeah.
Wait, how did he sign it? Popped out a socket.
Yeah.
Like, still, how do you...
Yeah. Wow.
The rest of the conspirators, they were on the run. Robert Catesby began to announce to the villagers that King James was dead, and he called for the Catholics to rise up and reclaim their rightful place in the kingdom. They rode from town to town, but instead of the huge army he expected, there were only about 40 men who decided to follow him. Ironically, Catesby and his men, they accidentally blew themselves up with their own gunpowder that they'd brought with them. Without Guy Fawkes there to help them with his expertise, they thought that in order to dry out the damp, they should sprinkle their gunpowder in front of an open fireplace. It exploded, of course, and one of the men went blind. The rest were now burned and injured. One man asked Robert Catesby what they were going to do next.
Are you serious?
He replied, "We mean here to die." On November the 8th, the Sheriff of Warwickshire showed up with a small army of 200 men. There was a shootout between the two groups. The weakened Catholic men did their best to go out fighting, but it was clear that the King's Guard was going to overpower them. Robert Catesby was shot, but he crawled to the nearby chapel. He was found on the floor of the church, hugging a statue of the Virgin Mary.
Wow.
The men who were left alive were taken prisoner and sentenced to hang in the gallows along with Guy Fawkes. On the 31st of January 1606, Guy Fawkes and his fellow conspirators were found guilty of treason, and their punishment would have been to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. This meant that a man was dragged through the streets before he was hanged in the gallows. But just before he was about to choke to death, they would let him go. As he gasped for breath, they would dig a knife into his stomach and pull out his entrails. Then they chopped off his arms and his legs while he was still alive. Then the 4 quarters of the body were taken to the 4 corners of England. As Guy Fawkes stood in the crowd, King James declared that these Catholic traitors were trying to blow up the entire island of England. This would have been physically impossible, of course, but it was enough to make the people extremely angry. They were screaming and booing, calling him a traitor. Before they could torture him, Guy Fawkes jumped, breaking his own neck. Even though he was not alive to feel the pain, they still went through with cutting his body apart into pieces.
Goodness.
The Gunpowder Plot had very nearly succeeded, and if it were not for an anonymous letter, Guy Fawkes may have actually succeeded at lighting the fuse. If the barrels of gunpowder had exploded, it would have been powerful enough to bring down the palace and nearby buildings. It would have killed the king and the princes, as well as some of the most powerful noblemen in the country. This would have left the throne to James's daughter, Princess Elizabeth. They had hoped that since she was so young, she would be easy to manipulate as a sort of puppet. Many believed that Robert Catesby would have eventually gotten more Catholics to follow him, and this would have erupted into an English civil war. After this incident, Parliament passed the Thanksgiving Act of 1606, which was a law that English citizens must pray and give thanks to God that the terrorists did not kill the king. That day became known as Guy Fawkes Night, or Bonfire Night, and it's celebrated every year on November the 5th. People usually celebrate by building a large bonfire and burning life-size dummies of Guy Fawkes. There is also a fireworks show to symbolize the explosions that never happened.
That's what the fireworks are about.
Always remembered
that makes sense.
the 5th of November. So really...
Wow.
Guys.
Not really what I thought it was.
Obviously, I've looked into this a little bit before, but I learned so many more details in this video that I didn't know about.
Yeah, this was very detailed.
It makes so much more sense to me now. I mean, even like before this, I couldn't quite understand, you know, what was the symbolic nature of the bonfire night itself, with the bonfire and the fireworks and whatnot. But that makes sense. I mean, it really does. What'd you think?
Gosh, I've got a range of emotions. It was very surprising, I think.
Completely different.
Especially to find out that it was a religious thing.
Oh, you didn't even know that?
I didn't know that.
Okay.
I did not know it was.
I didn't know how
Catholics
deep that went, but.
Oh, I don't. man, all I can say is they didn't play around back then
No, they didn't.
with punishment.
My goodness.
And yet people still had the bees to maybe not brains to do something like that, or to try to do something like that. Man, I can see why this is celebrated. I can see where the origins are from now. And I think it's important to understand, especially on this journey.
How wild is this that this has been going over every year for 400 years?
Yeah.
Like, did you guys do this in 2020 as well? Was that like, a lot of stuff didn't happen in 2020, right? So I'm curious if that happened that year as well. But other than that, I'm guessing it's pretty much happened every year, that is a long time to have a continuous tradition like that. From, a single event.
Yeah.
I think that's it for us today, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey to discover anything and everything about the UK and Ireland. Until next time, guys. Peace.
Bye.